Hey, it's Rio for Life, Kim D. Coming at you, hanging out here. Hoping you can hear me. I'm going to check a couple things out since I'm trying something a little new. So we shall see how all this works. I'm doing a little review of a book that I'm reading right now. I'm doing a little review. Oh, there we go. Made sure everything I can hear. Um, so here we go. I am reading Goodbye Magic Undies by Carrie Sweet, and it's how to say goodbye to high control, high demand groups and relationships. I'm going to read a little bit on the back here. Dr. Carrie Sweet is an experienced healthcare professional. Got a lot of letters behind her name. Diverse professional and personal background, her influence spans clinical, educational, and leadership realms. Published author and engaging speaker. Dr. Sweet's expertise bridges theory and practice. She's a dedicated advocate for informed consent and individual empowerment, autonomy, and health boundaries in both personal and professional settings. Committed to nursing excellence and catalyzing positive change within the healthcare community and beyond. Currently lives in Washington State at the time of this publishing with her wife and school-aged children. In her free time, she enjoys attending punk rock shows and Comic-Cons. As I'm deconstructing and rebuilding my life since my shelf broke in 2020, I've started reading some of these types of books to help me process this kind of new world that I feel like I'm living in. This book has been fantastic, and then I got to chapter 3. And chapter 3 is called Certainty. And I'm going to share this with you to kind of process it together. To be uncertain is to be uncomfortable, but to be certain is ridiculous. Voltaire. Okay, here we go. Absolute certainty feels fantastic, but it is a fickle friend. Being certain about unprovable ideas closed my mind to new ideas that might challenge my beliefs. One appeal of high control, high demand groups is that they often claim to have all the answers to life's questions. There is a singular blueprint to success in life, leaving no room for deviation. If an individual follows the leader's plan, then happiness will be the result. Trust the plan for future happiness, even if not happy now. If I followed the plan, I believed I was told to believe. When I doubted, I was told to doubt my doubts. If I questioned the veracity of a belief, they reminded me that smarter, more righteous people believed it to be true, and that should be enough for me. Having faith in unproven beliefs solely because someone more intelligent believed in them might be a challenge to comprehend, but it worked. I believed in many wild, magical, unprovable ideas. They presented the Mormon Church's doctrine to me as loving, fair, perfect, divinely inspired, and Christ-like. Many of my past beliefs were racist, homophobic, xenophobic, sexist, and, turning the page, incredibly toxic to myself and others. When I could not reconcile my personal convictions with the information that they taught me, I was still certain that Mormonism was true. I quickly rejected thoughts that controlled my beliefs. If it failed, I rationalized that the church was perfect, but people made errors. I knew the core teachings were true, and if that failed to help me accept the concepts in question, I would default to thinking that the idea was beyond my understanding as an unrighteous mortal being. My duty was to obey the teaching faithfully, and the truth would be revealed to me after I died. Everything I didn't understand in my life would finally make sense after it was too late to be helpful. My current understanding of science, ethics, and Jesus Christ's message contradict my past beliefs. Official Mormon doctrine provided most of the information I learned. Ideas passed orally from Joseph Smith's time. These ideas still influence the culture, though the LDS Church no longer officially publishes them. Certain beliefs I held in the past were influenced by my religion or family and may not represent broader Mormon experiences. Local leaders and fathers' interpretation of Mormons' belief can affect followers' thoughts. Although I believe my Mormon teachings, I don't claim all Mormons share those beliefs. I experienced living in a high demand, high controlled organization that dictated how I thought about myself and the world. This could be a common childhood experience. High demand organizations come in a variety of flavors. Religious and social groups, abusive families, or controlling parents may all be high demand, high control, HCHD groups. Outside sources program all children with information about themselves, whether factual or not. Well intentioned information can still be harmful. As you read, you may find you hold some of these beliefs in a modified version. I'm not here to judge your beliefs or condemn you. I still hold some nuanced versions of a few beliefs. Polygamy is an example of one of my nuanced beliefs. I don't agree with the Mormon doctrine that a man must have multiple wives to gain their own planet in the afterlife. Says stay tuned for their views on the polygamy in another chapter. I disagree with that Mormon teaching, but I don't dismiss polygamy as wrong for everyone. My past belief that polygamy was an internal doctrine and necessary for exaltation has evolved significantly. Now I only know that polygamy isn't a good fit for me. And these are the author's words. The next section is where she goes into some individual areas that there's a certainty about. And she's not trying to convince anybody that the church is evil or occult. Most people don't care about Mormonism. People who believe Mormonism is the only true religion won't believe me. If I tried to convince them, they're incorrect. I wish to demonstrate how an intelligent and well-meaning person can be completely wrong. The following is not a comprehensive list of the strange and horrifying incorrect things they taught me as a Mormon. For a more complete perspective, please see the resource section for excellent scholarly sources on Mormonism. And here's the things to consider with these following areas and questions. Do you share that belief? Perhaps you don't share the same belief, but it brings to mind a belief you find difficult to accept as true or beneficial. Where did you learn that information? Are the beliefs and resulting actions beneficial or detrimental? Can science, history, or your lived experience substitute the belief? Does the belief make sense when applied to people you know and love instead of people outside of your group? What would be your belief if disagreeing with their teachings carried no consequences. Hey, what am I doing? What I'm reviewing chapter 3 of a book by Dr. Carrie Sweet, Goodbye Magic Undies. And I'm having some difficulty with chapter 3 about certainty. So I'm sharing this with you. I was raised in the Mormon church. I'm 60 years old. 5 years ago, discovered that things weren't what I thought they were. And so now I'm learning basically how to be a new kind of human. And this is my way of, I don't know, sharing the messiness of all of this process for myself and the world at large. And I have all kinds of fun stuff I do too. I do crafts, I make butter by hand, I have all kinds of interesting things. So it's a kind of hodgepodge, my channel. But the purpose of it is me exploring this humanity that I'm living in. The very first thing she talks about here is temple garments. And just like she's talking, I don't remember a time when I didn't know that I would wear special underwear when I became an adult. They were to be worn 24/7 with a few exceptions. Always to remain close to your skin, so bra, things went over them, not under. They were meant to remain white, unmodified, hidden, and not discussed outside of the temple. Garments are changing. There's interesting things going on. They're making them where you can show more shoulder, which is beyond belief for people like me. That's shoulder porn. That's a temptation to the world. There's certain things that are there's modesty and a purity culture that's insane. But breaking out right in the beginning with temple garments in this particular chapter of certainty, yeah, there was a certainty I had about the process of my life. Motherhood is my divine and primary purpose in this life. The author says, I believed my main purpose in life was to get married and have as many children as possible. Not only was this my primary purpose, but nothing else I did would ever equal or surpass my role and services as a mother. After I died, I would raise any babies who had died prior to being born or before they were 8 years old. During the 1,000-year reign of Christ on the earth, eventually I would create a planet with my husband, and we would populate that planet with spirit children, who I would give birth to in perpetuity. No pressure, though. I would have sister wives in Mormon heaven, so my husband could create spirit children with all of us. And this is something, once again, with certainty that I knew. It's not beyond belief. There was a certainty about this. And it, personally for me, I had a lot of different times of inactivity, and one of them was when I was 20 and I had gotten married, and then right away I asked him about kids, and he said he didn't care, and I said, well, I'm not going to take the pill anymore. And within the year I got pregnant, and the difficult delivery, preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, lots of issues with delivery, and should have been a planned C-section instead of an emergency one. It's 1987 and things are different now. At the time, they said more children could kill me. And so I had my tubes cauterized when my child was about a year old. I was beginning to know I was going to be going through a divorce. I didn't want more children with him. But the end result, as time went on, I wanted that fullness. I wanted my body to feel a certain way, and I felt so much lacking. And I gained weight, and I lost weight, and then I gained weight. I ended up being 303 pounds. And I have a body dysmorphia where if I look in the mirror and I'm, let's say, 130 pounds, I would see the huge person. I would, in my head, that's what would be. And when I was the 303-pound person, I would behave and felt like the 130-pound. I had no restrictions. I felt like nobody was watching me. But when I would be trim, I felt all eyes on me. And so all of it produced this disconnect in my brain, all related around to the fact that I would not be able to experience this motherhood, this completeness of having this big family. I would have to be content to wait and live my life to be in the celestial kingdom, to have those eternal children. And so this right away, man, poof, it hit me hard. Okay, polygamy is required to reach the highest level of the celestial kingdom. The author writes, polygamy is God's higher law, but they suspended the practice on earth because of human weakness. I was not an equal opportunity polygamous supporter. Only men could take multiple wives. I fully expected at some point they could reinstate polygamy. Regardless of polygamy being legal in common, if polygamy became legal in common practice again, I knew we practiced it in the post-mortal existence. So, i.e., once we said, in the next life. And I always had when I would watch Sister Wives, I had a guilty pleasure, is what I called it. And it was more than that. It was seeing something in action. And I never really lived long-term in Utah. My family did. And but when they lived in Lehigh, they lived right by the Browns. And I don't know, the area of town they called Polygamy Lane because there were several polygamous families that lived right in that block. And so different letters home or phone calls would involve things about the neighbors, which inadvertently would involve the Browns. And so decades later, having them on TLC and seeing their family and seeing, oh my goodness, all of it. For me, it's like watching a train wreck. The wreckage that resulted in all of it with the good intentions that are founded in this religion. Yeah, it kind of blows me away. And then my step grandmother was the youngest of 26 with 2 wives, and her grandfather had 6 wives. And so my step family, proud pioneer heritage, i.e., they were part of polygamy, and they were part of the order where they were authorized by the church to continue practicing after it was made illegal so Utah could become a state. And so there's books written about that part of my extended family. And it's kind of interesting how I was raised, quote, regular LDS with fundamental background. So it's kind of like I had the best and worst of both worlds. It's kind of cool. So we're going to move on. Black skin is God's curse. Righteousness would turn people of color into white and delightsome individuals, which is the preferred state. Examples of this exist in the Book of Mormon, the Bible, and recent LDS teachings. There's so much I can say about this. The history of the things I accepted about the history and about different parts of them going and doing missionary work, and at the same time being encouraged to have sex with women and produce children of natives to help them become white and delightsome. And those are certain phrases that for me are just vile. Now, the the whole thought process of it is so disheartening. And because I was raised with my dad joined the church after him and my mother got divorced, so I'm the only child that went back and forth. My mother and stepfather were never members, and they lived perfectly normal lives, perfectly normal experiences that I always looked at in a different light. And I'm grateful for having all of this because now I have things to balance things off of. Next section talks about the certainty that Native Americans are literal Jewish descendants. The Book of Mormon recounts the history of people who crossed the Atlantic before Jesus Christ's birth. People of Jewish descent populated the North and South America and later the Pacific Islands. Oh, through DNA and through so many other things, we now know this is not true. And yet, there was a certainty. I knew. Like I said, beyond belief, I was certain. I would defend each and every one of these things in so many ways, in different parts of my life. The Catholic Church is the great whore of the world. The Catholic Church represented the great apostasy after the original apostles died. Mormon Church was necessary to restore the corrected and authorized priesthood keys and powers to the earth. So here we go. Yeah, enough said. That was the powerful words for a child, 5 years old in 1970. Prominent memories of hearing this in a talk, in something, reading it. I was 5 years old when those concepts about the Catholic Church were put into my head. And it's so hilarious because in high school and later in my life, the truest and best friends I've had, almost all of them are Catholic. So wonderfully unique. Okay, pay tithing or burn. If I didn't pay 10% of my gross income to the church, I would be burned as chaff in the second coming of Christ. Mormons jokingly call tithing fire insurance. They taught me a lot about the benefits of paying tithes. There was a debate over whether 10% of gross or net was required. A message from the leadership was clear. You pay tithings off your gross income equals more blessings. To solve my financial problems, they advised me to pay tithing for increased blessings. No gas in the tank? Did you pay tithing? No worries then. The gas will magically fill or get you to your destination, or you'll decide it wasn't worth the trip, or you'll take a ride from the neighbor. No matter the outcome, I would chalk it up to blessings from paying tithing and an honest full tithe. Every year I'd meet with the bishop for tithing settlement. They would present me with a printout of my tithing and fast offering and other donations, and I'd reconcile it with my own records and confess to either being full, partial, or a non-tithe paying member. Paying full tithe allows me to stay in good standing and attend the temple. If I wasn't a full tithe payer, we'd make a plan to restore to my worthy status. Okay, tithing. Oh, there goes a whole thing in my brain. I would pay tithing off my gross. And I had non-member spouses in different times of my life. And I never, looking back, there was no benefit. There absolutely was no benefit to me doing that, other than furthering this church that I believed in. I was raised to take things to the next step where you don't tip more than 10%. You don't give more to a human being than you're going to give to God. It's as simple as that. And I did not feel any sorts of ways at all. I felt justified. I felt righteous. I felt all those kinds of feelings. I was doing everything the way I was supposed to because I was paying a full tithe and I didn't give more than 10% to anybody. Now, in the world I'm living in, with this more nuanced way, kitty cat, I tip very well. I'm very, very generous. And even when I would buy things on Marketplace or something, I would give an extra dollar as a pay it forward. I would find creative ways to put money into things. And then over these past few years, I kind of changed because I would take that 10% and I would still donate it. Would not put it to me. I would use it for super chats, or I would use it for memberships on creators that I liked. Uh, and I justified it as, you know, I'm used to doing a certain thing in certain ways. And so it made sense. And then through therapy and life experiences and realizing, no, there's nothing wrong with me keeping my own money. I personally don't need to give it to anyone, any content creator. I am learning how to give it to myself, my money, instead of to any type of patriarch system, any man, any church, keeping my money for me. It's a process, and we're in the thick of it. Law of sacrifice. Oh, here's a big one. Oh, 1 second. When we move back to for tithing, one thing, and a lot of people don't ever bring this up because it's not so much their church experience, like the author talks about. Part of my church experience was I was instilled in me the law of consecration. I was taught at a very young age to be prepared to give everything over to the church, and that the church would take care of all of my needs. There would be a roof over my head. I would have food. Might not all be the tastiest food, but I would have food. And so being taught at a young age to be prepared to sacrifice to the law of consecration, yeah, it's consumed my life in different ways, whether I was active, inactive, because it was so instilled with me to be prepared for it. And so I understand so many thought processes of preppers and the Armageddon and food storage and, you know, the combining your forces. And that's the concept I got out of it. was I always wanted to be, or I always put myself where I'm the one you want on the desert island. I'm going to entertain you. We're going to have fun, but I can take care of things. And I know all of those types of things to get through that process of being on the deserted island. Because at a young age, I was prepared and taught how to consecrate and give everything over to a church. And then I would have to live with what remained. And I could make an amazing, fun life out of what remained. Because I'm a happy person, and I don't know, doesn't take much to keep me entertained. But it all stemmed from that law of consecration, which I also learned along with tithing. It kind of all went hand in hand. And then, of course, moved on into talents and treasures and everything. Line upon line, precept on precept. So, law of sacrifice. You made an oath to sacrifice my time, talent, money, and life if necessary to build up the church. Since childhood, they taught me to prioritize the Mormon church above all else, including health and family. As an adult, I made an oath in the temple to uphold this belief, and absolutely yes. And like I said, in my case, law of sacrifice went as far as the law of consecration. Hot drinks are forbidden except cocoa. Disobeying the word of wisdom was strictly forbidden. If I drank coffee, tea, cola, alcohol, or smoked a cigarette, I would go to hell, known as the lower tier of the multi-leveled Mormon heaven, the celestial kingdom. Yep. Inexplicably, hot cocoa was not to be included in the outlaw hot drinks described in Joseph Smith's Revelation. And I read that. Section 89, it's on one of my playlists. The mandates are connected to temple worthiness by the leaders. Elements like eating foods only in their season or partaking of meat sparingly don't seem to be the deal breakers. The church potlucks is evidence of this. Inconsistency doesn't deter my beliefs about caffeine, nicotine, or alcohol. So, word of wisdom. Yeah, me unpacking the word of wisdom is a huge thing. I held to the belief that all of this was true and I was the one with the human failings. I was the one who couldn't live up to it. And I would, in my inactive and weak times, from the time I was about 20 years old until, 20. So that would be 1985 until 2012. I did not drink coffee. I wouldn't, because coffee would lead me to the celestial kingdom. Coffee would take me to where I couldn't live with God. I'd drink, and I would smoke occasionally, and sometimes I did drugs, but coffee, no, 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 no. That was the big bad demon. And oh, there was that time. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I take it back. I was drinking some coffee in 1999. That was the break time. That was the one time in between, because that's when I was put in the 12-step program for drinking coffee in order to keep my temple recommend. Yeah, me and coffee. So with that long, I had about a 6-month period of time, 1990, 1999 to 2000. That was when 1999, I hadn't drank in 14 years and I hadn't smoked in 7. And for no real reason at all, I picked up a glass of champagne and bummed a cigarette December 31st, 1999, and didn't look back until later. Until later. That will be a different story. My excommunication and rebaptism process all had to do with things later. But on the word of wisdom side, I didn't have the emotional connection to drugs or alcohol the way I did to coffee and do. It used to be 9 times out of 10 I could drink coffee without the overwhelming feeling of going to a, quote, hell that I don't believe in. Now it's about 24 out of 25 times I can drink my coffee and have no reaction. So it's getting better. I'm rewiring my brain to where I don't have those immediate reactions, just a whole body reaction to something that's completely normal and quite enjoyable. And so there you go. You can easily see why this chapter on certainty, it just could hit you hard. Okay, going forward, Satan can weaponize my body. The author writes, I could cause a boy or man to commit sin by my immodesty, wearing a tank top, midriff, two-piece bathing suit, shorts above my knee, or provocative makeup were tools of Satan. And Satan would use my exposed body to tempt a priesthood holder away from righteousness. It was my responsibility to cover my body and protect the men in my life. 110%. Whoop! Yep. Instilled in you. Oh my goodness. The lessons, the talks, um, oh, it's disgusting the way it causes you to think and feel about yourself. And I've really been challenging myself this past year with different types of clothes. And I was in Hawaii recently and bought a lot of different clothes. I did a little fashion show. I think I did a live for it, or pictures or something. But I'm having fun with it. Trying to figure out me, for me, knowing that I am only a reflection of me. I'm not a reflection of anybody else. I'm no longer reflecting a church. I'm no longer having that association. And so, but I have temperature issues and I always feel cold. So I'm dressed the way I am more for that, less for modesty. Oh, getting older can be interesting. But yeah, the thought that I'm responsible and I can pull someone away just because of how I look. It's like, no, 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 no. It doesn't work that way. Okay, God hates second ear piercings. Having more than one piercing in each ear for a female or any ear for a male was defying God's will. Apparently, God really hated body piercings and tattoos. If I defiled my body in those ways, it would be like spray painting graffiti on a Mormon temple wall. Right? Mine goes, because I'm a little bit older, I think. She looks younger than me. um, Having any piercing for a female was no, 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 no. I didn't get my ears pierced till I was living with my mom. I moved to my mom's when I was 14. And I think I was 15, 16 when I finally got my ears pierced. And when the church finally lightened up on that, my stepmother got her ears pierced and I about went through the roof. I could not believe that she would allow herself to defile her body only because now it was okay. It's like, no, you see, oh. And I didn't see it then, but I see it now. How the church subtly changes these things to be more socially acceptable. I totally missed it. Totally missed it because I was so caught up in my own feelings of disgust. Oh my goodness. And I laugh as I say it out loud. I was disgusted with a human being for getting their ears pierced. Who does that? You've got to be kidding me. Oh, yeah, I did. I did. I was there. But yeah, apparently God doesn't like these things. Oh, abortion is the most important political litmus test. Voting for someone who supported abortion was never an option, no matter how bad the alternative candidate. Introducing nuance to the abortion discussion was incredibly dangerous and could lead to apostasy. Yeah, there's so many things in my brain. Yeah, not good. I'm not ready to speak on these issues because I'm just at a beginning stage of understanding different parts of the verbiage of the political system. Um, I had a young man when I was in high school and then first year of college, and he was a political science major and was involved with the Democrat Party and uh, all kinds of things. And so I had a basic understanding of a lot of the verbiage and things involved in the processes, but I've had a few decades of gap and misogyny and patriarchy and, oh my God, putting myself in a lower status. And it's interesting learning more about that again. So I'm going to refrain from anything to do with that for now. Love the sinner, not the sin. Oh, here we go. Being gay is an abomination and often compared to being an alcoholic. Booze attracts alcoholics to its destructive forces, just as unnatural sexual acts attract homosexuals. Same sex attraction, what a term, is something you can overcome. You can still be righteous if you never give in to the temptation. Didn't have a lot of people in my world that were homosexual. Just it wasn't a thing that I was really exposed to in my life until I moved to northern Minnesota. 1979, 14 years old. I started high school in the fall. Later, I had friends. Um, I guess everybody knew they were gay before they did, kind of thing. It was one of those, or they all knew and I didn't. And I didn't, because I didn't look at people that way. I didn't think about sex. I didn't think about or care about who or what people were doing in their bedrooms, who or what they were voting for. You know, it was like religion, politics, and sex were things you don't talk about. And so I look at human beings in a different way. So it's kind of interesting. I didn't have to have those thoughts until I was inactive, and then I didn't think enough about it. Later, um, I used to believe in that same-sex attraction kind of mode, that it was something you could change, that it was like something you chose, like a lifestyle that you chose, like choosing to be Mormon and live in that lifestyle. um, or the nuanced part of being Mormon. See, everything's got gray areas now. So as far as the homosexuality, it's not same-sex attraction, and you are born and you are who you are, and change is not eh, whatever. You're just who you are. I'm not going to judge you or do think anything on that. It's like I said, whether whatever. It's just not my thing. I'd rather learn about, the sunset you saw, or something that lights your fire and your passion. I could care less about those other things. I had a little shop for a short period of time, and I had 1,500 bridesmaids gowns and about 25 wedding gowns. And there was what's it called, trans woman, man, a male. So you got to help me with some of these things, because I'm not going to blame it on being Gen Jones, Gen X, but I'm not really PC, and so I mess it all up all the time. And I don't mean to not be PC, I just don't care. Anyways, he was working with his wife and his therapist, and she said, all I want is for you to go get some fancy gown. And I think she was under the idea that that's, I don't know, proves you're a woman or you're feminine or something. But it was just part of their thing. And so that's how he met me, because I had these gowns that could be rented or you could buy them. And we went through, he was a large and tall man, and went through and found a dress that fit, but there were things needed to make it really not look like crap. And so I found some accessories, found some other tools, found some different things, worked a little bit of sewing magic, did some alterations, added some stuff, and just made a really sweet kind of less bridesmaid, more kind of cocktail dress. Something, because her thing was she wanted him to sit at home, because they're not really, he's not really public. It's not about that for him. And so it was just such a cool thing to be a part of that process with another human being. I didn't have to understand it. I didn't have to agree with it. I was just there for it. And so I've kind of adjusted and learned. It's not what I thought it was. And any label you want to put on me for a thought process that I was given and indoctrinated to when I was 2.5 years old, you can suck an egg, because it's not what I'm ending up. It's not what I'm going to end up being. All right, here we go. The end is nigh. Oh, this is a good one. The imminent Armageddon we were preparing for made me anxious about not being able to marry or have children. In my childhood home, we had a large timeline chart that outlined events that had and would come to pass, signaling the second coming of Jesus Christ. This was a popular topic discussed at church and in official LDS publications, and in our homes. I knew I was part of the elect generation to usher in the next era. Yep. Hey, like I said, she's younger than me, some oldie but a goodie. Armageddon is nigh. Definitely a much stronger message during the Cold War years, during the time before the Berlin Wall fell, before the USSR was, before Russia was the USSR. And like I said, bear with me if I mess a few things up. But yeah, Armageddon, be prepared. Rising generation, rising high, rising high. We're the voice of every nation, rising high, rising high. Oh yeah, oh yeah. The music, some of the music, just man, rocket out for life. Oh yeah. We had a year's supply of food for every member of our family, and we lived it. It wasn't storage. It was rotated. It was used in our daily food, our daily meals. We had dehydrated milk that we would mix with half. Let's see, we'd have half portion of the dehydrated milk with quarter portion of water and a quarter portion of skim milk. And I have never been more happy to be lactose intolerant. I never liked milk, especially that stuff. But once again, I learned. I learned how to make butter from hand, make cheese, ice cream, and all these things without electricity. I could dehydrate. We gardened. Each of us kids had portions of a garden, and we took care of them ourselves, and we did the harvesting and canning and um, made fruit roll-ups. I make marshmallows. Don't get me started on candy and chocolates and baking and casseroles, although here they're called hot dishes. But Mormon land, it was casseroles. Pretty sure, I don't know. In Minnesota, I don't know. Don't know what the Mormon community would call them. Ooh. Probably hot dish. So now, global warming is a hoax. The author writes, although I believed humans were commanded to be good stewards of the earth, I viewed climate change as just fake as carbon dating used to determine the earth's age. I was not taught that because that kind of wasn't a thing yet, basically. Or was a thing not talked about until a certain point in time. Mixed marriages are wrong. Kind of went through a little of that with the black skin stuff. Oh, immortals walk the earth. Did you know that? Century-old individuals perform covert acts of kindness for Mormons. 3 Nephites are blessed to roam the earth until Jesus returns. The Apostle Paul is still on earth, preparing a way for Christ and helping believers along his way. And some immortal beings are not helpful or willingly present. Cain had been cursed to walk the earth, and some believe he's Bigfoot. Even as a believing Mormon, the Bigfoot theory stretched credibility. Well, yes, and then I live up where there's Sasquatch hunters, so there's things that meld together. Now, the immortals walking the earth ties into so many different things where you start talking about the veil. You know, when we passed from our pre-existence into this mortal life and were born, we passed through a veil. And that veil was something that affected our memory of our previous life. And this is where the challenge of faith comes in. We don't remember, but I was taught we feel. And that deja vu is part of the sensing, the memory, we chose the people, we chose to be in our family, we chose certain things. For me, these things all tied together because they're immortal. so they passed through the veil, and they have a resurrected body in some cases. Cain, never died. So there's all different situations within these immortals. I have Scottish ancestry through the wonderful thing of genealogy, which a lot of Mormons are kind of into. We have our family history traced way back, I believe, to the 1300s. Can't remember. But Edinburgh, Scotland, a little south of there, is now a cow pasture. But there's still a sign, and that's Liberton. And that is my maiden name, and that is where my DNA comes from. And so as you talk about the immortals, there can be only one. And we occasionally joke back and forth on Facebook between me and my cousins across the pond. Exactly who will that be? And between me and you, they all know who it's going to be. There can be only one. And that will be me. So, I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. Moving to the next one. Righteous cities can disappear instantly. It was entirely possible if I missed a church meeting, they could all be translated, taken up to heaven like in the rapture, and I would have missed out on the free ride to the top-level Mormon heaven. Wow. See, I missed that one. I knew about righteous cities disappearing instantly, but never had it correlated to missing a church meeting. That's a unique one to me. It's interesting. I could actually see the connection to how you could think that. Oh, here we go. Some of these have their own section. Like I said, I struggled with getting through this. Food storage. 1 to 3 years of food storage was essential for our survival when the apocalypse happens. Having food storage was also insurance against other types of hard times, like unemployment. Storing that much food presented many issues, such as financial costs to buy the proper storage and the rotation to avoid waste. No worries. They gave me plenty of resources to learn to grow, dehydrate, prepare with canning, freeze, and mill food. Storage space was a common problem in Mormon households, and I am sure we were one of the thousands of families who uses boxes filled with number 10 cans as furniture. In case you don't know what a number 10 can is, picture the large metal cans that you see at the bottom of the grocery shelf. They make very decent benches and bed frames. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that aspect of food storage. We didn't have that problem. We had an entire room dedicated. My funny food storage story happened in 2020. Lent's not a thing. Holy Week and all that's not a thing that we really did or do. Although this year was the first year the Mormon Church actually talks about it. It was kind of interesting, some of the things they did. Like I said, change, weirdness to something that's not supposed to change. I normally give up something for Lent in conjunction and solidarity with my Catholic friends. And that year, I was inspired to give up spending money. And so I did all my food storage. I did everything. I bought toilet paper. I bought everything to get me through Lent, which ended, I think, April 7th that year. And we all know what happened, COVID. And if it hadn't have been, oh man, it was such a process. My shelf breaking, it didn't happen all at once. It happened over pieces. And then still, chunks of Mormon keep falling out of my brain. The connections were made, and I had brief moments where I thought that I needed to go back to church, that this was like a sign. I was still a sign seeker, and I saw me making that choice and everything that happened as being, I need to just accept it, that I need to go back. It's time to stop avoiding the pull of the community and all of everything. And I didn't. I proceeded to ride out those uncomfortable feelings and move forward with the things I was learning. And so, but that's my little food storage thing. What I'm doing to undo that now, I don't have food storage. I do like monthly shopping only because I don't like going to the store, and it works out better for me. I still make a lot of my own things. Um, it's a process. It's a process. Um, so you'll see me do more with electronics and mainly gadget cooking and different things that I usually don't do, partly because the hands don't do as much as they used to. Uh, but I still think it's wicked cool to know all the crap that I know how to do. Like I said, the deserted island, man. Pick me for your team. All right. New name. My new name. God had a secret name for me, and they would give me it in the temple. As a child, I believed the name would be in God's language. But it disappointed me to learn it was just a religious name given based on your temple endowment date. I got my endowment and was sealed to my second husband on my fifth wedding anniversary. Our fifth wedding anniversary. My family drove out. It was a San Diego temple, which is a beautiful temple. My goodness, it's gorgeous. Inside and out. And my temple experience was every single thing I ever thought it would be. And then some. I got my name. My stepmother was with me. Went through the endowment. I was being sealed to my parents, my stepmom and my dad, prior to being sealed to my husband. And my batshit crazy father decided to do something, whatever. He wasn't there. We were waiting. We were all ready. 45 minutes later, everything's getting delayed. They do have timetables there. He said he couldn't step on the temple grounds because he wasn't worthy. And so I couldn't be sealed to him. And it was a heartbreaking, devastating thing. One of my brothers, they put their arms around me, and he said, even if we wait until he's dead, you'll be a part of our forever family. And I took such warmth and comfort in that, in knowing that someday I would have that. So back to the new name. I got my new name. Now, your new name, men get their new name. You get your new name. He knows your new name, but you don't know his. When you're risen from the grave, he will use your new name, your husband, to rise you with his priesthood powers. Like I said, nothing sounds as, I don't know, it doesn't sound the same in your head as saying it out loud. You go through the veil, gives you your name, and you go through, he reaches out your hand and you go through the veil into the celestial room, and there was a peace, there was a comfort, there was a, for me, I wasn't uncomfortable with the Masonic symbolisms and things because I had been in Job's Daughters, which is a youth auxiliary of the Masons. My stepfather on my step grandfather, my mother's remarried. He was a Mason, and so I was allowed to become in the auxiliary and part of the Masonry. And so those parts weren't ranked. And the new name, though, I loved my new name. God gave that to me. So I believed. Now it's all by a day. Everybody in the world on that day gets the same name. I can go to this website and type in the date of my endowment and know what name was assigned for that day. Ta-da! Nothing miraculous. Nothing God. Nothing special. Nothing unique. Nothing to set me apart. Just chattel. Just nothingness. And I was drilled into me, you don't talk about these things, you never give out that information. And it's with a hesitancy and a knowledge that these words are words. There's no specialness to it. There never was. And the name Emma that I was given in the temple that provided me such a peace and such a softness, a temperament. It gave me, I felt not like it was an alter ego. I felt like it was a way to temper the exuberance and the loud laughter and all the wah that exists in me. It was a way to, it gave me the softness I always felt Emma, the name Emma portrayed in my mind. Joseph's wife, Emma Smith. It resonated within me. So yeah, finding out this, that your new name, yeah, not so new, not so special. Yeah. Not, it's just one more thing. Different kind of shelf. This chapter 3, uncertainty. Thank you, Dr. Carrie Sweet, for, doing this. I am a writer, and Mormon journaling and a betrayal that involved my journals. I don't write. I'm a writer who quit writing because of that betrayal. And so the day will come when I work through some of these things, and I will write, and I know I will. And in the meantime, I get to read as much as possible. And these experiences and these people that they're not showing the way, they're just sharing their experience. There's nothing they're doing that's either greater or less than what I'm doing right now. It's all just these little pieces. And so the next one is how Mormon prophets speak directly with Jesus Christ. Yeah. We believe they actually, it's an actual conversation. They actually communicate. The apostles and current prophet actually have this, and it's not praying. That it's, we believe they Jesus actually physically appears and chats. He's actually in charge of what's happening. And these revelations and these instructions we're getting are direct. And that's just not true. Visions are real. This is where she talks about Nephi having the same vision as his father. And Joseph Smith's vision. Oh my goodness, we are rapidly getting through this. I cannot believe it. It's page 22, and there's 25 pages in this chapter. All right, here we go. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the only true church. No faith traditions have the entire restored gospel except for Mormons. Period. End of story. They are it. And with that said, at the same time, before you graduate primary, you have to memorize the 12 Articles of Faith. And Joseph Smith was answering a question about what do the Mormons believe. And so he responded in the newspaper, and you'd have to have a better understanding of how newspapers worked in this time period. But he responded, and with the 13 Articles of Faith. The 11th Article of Faith is we claim the privilege of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of our own conscience. Let them worship how, where, and what they may. So, and always, had this love and acceptance of other faiths, especially since half of my family wasn't of the same faith or the same belief at all. Most of my other family didn't even go to church. I would go to the Baptist church on a bus because it was important to me to go to church. The weekends I would be with my mom versus my dad. Or whatever church had a bus I ended up going to. So yeah, we claim that privilege. But now, yeah, I'm seeing the militant and the more dictator aspects of that statement. That's the only true church. The us versus them factors that come in. I can't even go on and on about just that one statement of certainty. And remember, we're not talking belief, we're not talking about knowledge, we're talking about certainty. And I knew these things with a certainty, or they were a certainty. You know, it was beyond, like I said, beyond belief lied my certainty. Kolob. God lives on a planet named Kolob. If You Could Hide to Kolob was one of my favorite LDS hymns. I fantasized about taking a spaceship there and getting answers from the source. And this is the author's writing. If You Could Hide to Kolob was not one of my favorite LDS hymns. Come Follow Me, one of my favorites. But I too fantasized about the spaceship to Kolob to get answers from the source. And I too wondered, when I have my own planet with my husband and the sister wives, will God visit me from Kolob? How will that work? You know, so important. I mean, I thought the celestial kingdom, you're living with God, but this is beyond the celestial kingdom. This is the life after the celestial kingdom. This is a new life, the new world. It's not a reincarnation. It'll be new spirit children. Oh my gosh, like I said, when I say it out loud now, it just boggles my mind. All right, here we go. Mormon critics are agents of Lucifer and are set on destroying my faith. The author writes, I could only use church-approved sources to learn about the gospel and church history. Reading, watching, participating, or associating with anything anti-Mormon made me unworthy of temple attendance. I was asked this specific question during worthiness interviews to be given a temple recommend. There you have it. This is a, internet world now, but in the day before, we had books in the library. We had books, and I didn't grow up in Utah. I lived in Denver, and I went to the library, but would never look at those types of books. It wasn't until I was 14 in Minnesota, and I had joined Library Club my first year living there as a freshman. And so it was my first time having lots of exposure to the process of the books. And I loved it. I had always just been a user of a library. This was a little different. And so putting books away, helping with requests, ordering books, like I said, it's a 1979, 1980 school year. And learning about places like Baker and Taylor and all the ways to find a book that you want. And as I was going through, there was a section, and I didn't really ever think about it. But I saw a book, Out of the Darkness, and then I don't remember if that's the name of the Tanner book, but there was a book by the Tanners, Sandra Tanner, and I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong to read it. And I tried to justify in my head that, you know, it was I just tried to justify so many things while I was reading it. And I did seminary through a correspondence course because I was the only member in my whole town when I lived in Nashwauk. And so Grand Rapids was the church about 25 miles away. So here I am reading this, and they're talking about the temple, and none of it seemed wrong. It was the first time I read what now, it's a anti-Mormon, there's so much more available. But what I read didn't do anything but scare me. That's the disheartening part. It terrified me that someone would betray the church, that anyone would do that. Anyone who believed, how could you? How could you ever betray it? How could you ever look at something? How could you ever? When I walked into the Lutheran church, they had pamphlets, little booklets that you could pick up. And one of them, they had things about if you're going through grief, if you're struggling with something. And one of them said how to save someone from the Mormon church. I never touched that because I'm like, I don't need to be saved. Why do they think I need to be saved? And it wasn't until these past 5 years I even understood the difference and about the Nicene Creed and why people don't think Mormons are Christian. And And I actually became confirmed Lutheran. Um, that's where the cute boys were, so I went to that church. No, I really connected with a lot of the things I was learning there, but it was always in the back of my mind that these people believe they're saving people like me. And I didn't tell them that I was a Mormon. That was a biggie. The times when I was inactive, most people didn't even know because I didn't want to be a bad reflection on the church. Oh, yeah. The church was good, me was bad. We're coming up to the finale. Masturbation. The author writes, masturbation is abusing and perverting the body's power, and one should never engage in it. Interesting. I never thought about it. I never had any... I would press something against me, like a Sharpie marker or something, and it wasn't a sexual thing. I never thought of it as anything. And I think it was around, I don't know, 8, 7. Nothing ever inside. There was no anything. I mean, it was just this weird sensory thing. And then I couldn't get baptized when I was 8 because my parents weren't, I wasn't born under the covenant. And my parents didn't tell me this. This is something I found out from my primary teacher when I was asking why I wasn't getting ready for baptism. I had to wait till I was 9 and have the missionary lessons. So I often joke, it's all I've known since I was 2.5. Am I second gen or am I a convert? My stepmother's multiple generation, so it makes my half-sibling multiple generation Mormon. What does that make me? I can tell you. It makes me a Mormon on record right now until I decide to change that. But I no longer associate with a belief in that church. And as far as masturbation, yeah, when I was 9 years old and I had my interview with the bishop and he asked me if I obey the law of chastity and explained to me what chastity was, since I didn't do anything like that, I safely knew I could answer no. I mean, yes, I obeyed the law of chastity. But to be in an interview at that young age, being presented with a verbiage that you don't know and concepts that you're not aware of, and to have to agree and say, yes, I live this. There is no informed consent. It is insanity, and it is wrong, and it should not be allowed to continue at all. At all. The bishops interviewed and now they're wanting to lower, the age for baptisms of the dead. Right now, I believe it's 11, 12, and to lower it to 8. And so this is not something I want for the future for any child. She starts to wrap up this chapter by saying, I do not own my body. And here she goes. My physical body did not belong to me. It belonged to Heavenly Father. My body was a gift from God. They taught me it should glorify Him. The LDS Church discourages physical feelings, such as sexual desire outside of heterosexual marriage, sealed in the temple. My virtue, aka virginity, was something I owed to my future husband. It was his to claim, not for me to share with anyone else, including myself. Masturbation was a forbidden sin. Failure to abstain from masturbation would require a visit with the bishop to confess and repent. The first time I was told to discuss a sexual sin with the bishop was when I was 12. I knew very little about sex and nothing about masturbation. I was chatting with my mother about unrelated topics when she paused speaking and with a lowered voice inquired if I ever touched myself for enjoyment. I did not know what she meant. I didn't understand the question or what she expected for a response. I came up with an appropriate response. I always wanted to give the correct answer. So I mentioned that bathwater felt good down there. That was the wrong answer. She directed me to speak with the bishop so I could repent. I was too scared to ask what I was supposed to repent for. When she asked me a few weeks later if I had spoken to the bishop, I hadn't. Guiltily, I said something vague to explain to her why I hadn't repented, and we never talked about it again. It was too embarrassing to talk with the bishop. I felt guilt and shame for something I didn't understand and hadn't done. I'm sure she had the best of intentions as a parent, and she was following the Mormon blueprint, which was direction from God, regardless of the intent. The interaction left me confused about masturbation. What was clear to me was that using my body in certain ways was evil, and I would have to talk to an old man who I barely knew from church about any mistakes I made using my body. Whoa. Oh, I was wrong. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start wrapping this up with, and we're halfway through. I will do a part 2. There's so much I could say, hours and hours and hours. The things that you're taught about your body not being your own, and chastity and virginity, and the viewpoints of rape, incest, sexual assaults in all different forms. All of that would be my fault. A lot of us were raised, it would be better to die than to succumb and lose your virtue. That's a really messed up thing. Women have enough to deal with carrying their keys out and doing all kinds of things for self-protection. But to have that over your head, that you're actually in that position, what you're supposed to do is die. This church would rather have you die than be damaged. Sad. Like I said, this chapter on certainty, the next one is Father Knows Best, so this is a really good stopping point for me. Got about 2 more pages of these. I highly recommend this book. I'm only sharing with you this chapter because I just was struggling so much with the depth of how each statement of certainty does. It goes beyond belief, it goes beyond knowledge, and many of us defended each of these to the point of, I know people looked at me like I was crazy. I know friends and people that have left my life because of my defense of these things. There's a heartbreak to all of it. There is a deep heartbreak to losing that certainty. For me, personally, I need something on the other end of the equal sign to make sense. And what this whole process has done is it's made my whole brain off kilter, because I don't have anything on the other end of the equal sign. But what I'm learning is I don't need one, and that I never needed one. And my life is best served by trying to stay in this direct moment, right here with you. We're here in this moment. processing, growing, sharing, learning. Those are the things I want to do and have in my life. And the positive feelings I get by going through this process are going to help make the next 32 plus years on my life everything and then some. Because I intend on having a fullness, not of a gospel, but a fullness of a life, well lived, unapologetically, authentically me. Little by little, I get there. So, thank you for sharing this with me. Leave comments, leave suggestions. I guarantee you, you cannot be more critical or judgmental than my own family have been. You cannot say any terrible thing or call me a name or do anything damaging to me that my current active Mormon family doesn't already do. So, with that said, I look forward to this, and I'm going to end with my own quote that I've Googled. It's mine. I own it. I live it. Every breath is another chance and another choice. What's next? Kim D. High. Rio out.